Welcome to Living Your Senior Life, the podcast where we celebrate everything that makes this stage of life so exciting, fulfilling, and full of adventure. We're Mark and Debbie, and today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, hiking for seniors. Whether you've been hitting the trails for years or you're thinking about lacing up for the very first time, this episode is packed with practical tips to help you hike smarter, safer, and with a lot more confidence. We're covering everything from choosing the right trail and gear to staying hydrated, hiking with joint issues, and why hiking poles might just be the best investment you make this year. Before we jump in, a quick note. The information we share today is for general informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always check with your doctor before starting any new physical activity, especially if you have existing health conditions. Your health comes first, always. So grab a cup of coffee, tea, or your water, get comfortable, and let's get started.
Welcome to this deep dive. I'm really excited about today's topic.
Yeah, it's a fantastic one.
It really is. Whether you are prepping for a family trip or looking forward to your own retirement adventures, or, maybe you're just insanely curious about the biomechanics, physiology, and the psychology of aging in the outdoors.
If that's you, you are in exactly the right place.
Absolutely. Because today we are exploring a comprehensive guide from the publication Living Your Senior Life. Specifically, we're looking at their updated piece from March 9, 2026, titled Hiking for Seniors.
And we should clarify, we are looking at this not just as a pleasant weekend guide for grandparents.
Right.
It's really a deeply fascinating look at how our bodies interact with nature as we age.
So consider this your shortcut to being incredibly well-informed on outdoor accessibility, the kinetic chain of the human body, and the psychology of exertion.
To set the baseline for our discussion today, I think we should contextualize what the medical establishment actually asks of older adults.
Yeah, let's start there.
Because the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, they routinely push a target of 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity every single week for adults 65 and older.
Which is a lot of time if you hate exercising.
Exactly. For a significant portion of the population, hitting that metric means staring at a television screen while grinding away on a gym treadmill.
Which feels like an absolute chore. I mean, nobody wants to do that.
No, they don't. And the brilliant framing of this guide is that hiking essentially hacks that metric.
Right.
You hit the cardiovascular goal, but your brain is so engaged with navigating the terrain, reading the weather, processing the scenery, it completely bypasses the mental friction of traditional exercise.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the hidden benefits here go far beyond just checking a box for weekly cardio.
Oh, for sure.
The research we're looking at shows that spending time actively navigating nature drastically reduces cortisol.
The primary stress hormone.
Yes. We are talking about measurable biochemical drops in anxiety and depression symptoms.
And while that psychological shift is happening, the physical adaptation is just as intense.
It really is. The uneven terrain forces the body into the state of continuous microadjustments.
Which improves bone density.
Right, and it strengthens stabilizing muscles and enhances proprioception, which is, your body's ability to sense its movement and balance.
It's essentially a perfect storm of environmental stimulus and physical exertion.
But the transition from a controlled gym environment to an unpredictable trail, it does require some prep.
A deliberate shift in preparation, yes. Particularly regarding the medical pre-check.
Yeah, let's talk about the doctor conversation.
Right.
Because people hate that part.
They do. Often people view the talk to your doctor before beginning any exercise program warning as just a generic legal disclaimer.
Or a barrier to entry, like asking for permission to go outside.
Exactly. But the guide reframes this as a critical parameter setting exercise.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't asking for permission. You are defining the physiological sandbox you'll be playing in.
I love that framing.
This is where hidden factors, which are completely ignored by typical hiking manuals, come into sharp focus.
The medication factor is a perfect example of that. I was reading the section on how common prescriptions actively alter thermoregulation.
It's a huge blind spot for a lot of people.
It completely shifts how you have to plan a route. If you're taking diuretics or beta blockers or certain blood pressure medications, your internal thermostat is operating under a totally different set of rules.
Right. Take a beta blocker, for instance. It literally caps your heart rate.
Which is wild to think about.
So if you are tackling a steep incline, your heart physically cannot pump faster to meet the oxygen demand the way it used to.
And your body might not sweat as efficiently to cool down either.
Precisely. You need that parameter-setting conversation with a doctor to understand your specific warning signs for heat exhaustion.
Instead of just relying on generic advice off the internet.
That heart rate cap is a major variable. You have to know your medically adjusted target heart rate for moderate exercise so you can recognize your own sweet spot.
And the same logic applies to joint conditions, right?
Yes, if a hiker is managing osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, or navigating life post-hip replacement, the trail is absolutely not off limits.
It just dictates the terrain.
The terrain and the load-bearing strategy.
Yeah.
You use that medical baseline to map out a route that provides the therapeutic benefits of movement without crossing the threshold into joint degradation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because mitigating that joint degradation brings us to what the guide considers the holy grail of senior hiking gear.
The hiking poles.
The hiking poles. I always associated trekking poles with, I don't know, extreme alpine mountaineers.
Or viewed them through a stigma of being mobility crutches.
Totally. But the biomechanics outlined here completely upend that assumption.
The guide argues they are the single best investment an older hiker can make.
And the physics of it makes a compelling case for hikers of any age, really.
It does. The physics really come down to kinetic load redistribution.
Break that down for us.
Well, when you walk normally, you have 2 points of contact with the earth.
Yeah.
Every time your heel strikes the ground, a shock wave travels up your ankle, through your knee, and into your lower back.
Right.
When you introduce hiking poles, you instantly double your points of contact. You create a four-legged framework.
Which drastically improves lateral stability.
And that is the absolute cornerstone of fall prevention. But crucially, you are taking a significant percentage of the impact load off the lower extremities.
And transferring it into the arms.
The arms, the shoulders, and the latissimus dorsi muscles. You are essentially giving your knees a shock-absorbing bypass system.
And it isn't just a rigid stick. I didn't realize how customizable they are to the environment.
Oh, very much so.
Like you leave the carbide tips exposed for biting into dirt, mud, and rocky trails, giving you that aggressive traction.
Right.
But if you were walking on a paved parked path or asphalt, you cap them with rubber tips.
Which protects the trail infrastructure, absorbs the harsh vibration of the pavement, and keeps the poles from clicking incessantly.
That clicking drives me crazy.
It can be a lot. But that foundation of traction we're talking about extends directly to footwear as well.
Oh, the guide is uncompromising on this. Standard athletic sneakers are a major liability on a trail.
They lack the torsional rigidity and the grip required for uneven surfaces. The recommendation is dedicated trail runners or hiking shoes featuring a wide toe box.
Why the wide toe box specifically?
It allows the toes to naturally splay out upon impact, which provides a wider, much more stable base of balance.
That makes total sense.
Furthermore, the outsole needs aggressive multidirectional lugs. They specifically reference Vibram soles.
Made of that vulcanized rubber compound.
Originally developed for mountaineering, yes.
Yeah.
Because they provide a friction coefficient that standard foam sneakers simply cannot match on wet rocks or loose dirt.
Okay, so we've got the shoes sorted. Let's talk clothing. You already know the golden rule of outdoor apparel is that cotton kills.
A classic warning.
But the guide elevates this beyond the basic beginner warning by actually tying it to the physiology of aging.
Because as our bodies age, our thermoregulatory systems become less efficient.
Right, we do not warm up as quickly when chilled. So if you hike in a cotton t-shirt or worse, heavy denim jeans, and you sweat, that cotton just traps the moisture right against your skin.
And if the wind picks up or the sun drops, that wet fabric accelerates heat loss.
It plunges your core temperature and creates a very real hyperthermia risk. So the guide mandates moisture-wicking synthetic or merino wool base layers,
Materials that actively pull sweat away from the skin.
paired with a packable mid-layer and a windproof shell.
So we have mitigated the physical impact with the footwear, the poles, and the layered clothing. But if a physiological or environmental issue does arise, you cannot rely on the safety net most of us default to in modern life.
The cell phone.
Exactly. This brings up a non-negotiable tech requirement. Most scenic, immersive hiking trails are geographically isolated from cell towers.
Relying on an iPhone for an emergency extraction is a dangerous gamble out there.
The standard protocol for older hikers, particularly those going solo, is carrying a personal locator beacon, or PLB.
The Garmin InReach is the classic example they highlight. These are satellite communicators.
They don't need a cell tower.
No, they ping off the Iridium satellite network in low Earth orbit. So if you suffer a medical event or a severe fall, you press an SOS button, And it transmits your exact GPS coordinates to an International Emergency Response Coordination Center.
Which is incredible peace of mind.
Yeah.
But even beyond the extreme emergency tech, your everyday smartphone still plays a role if you prep it correctly.
Yes, the offline maps.
I have to download your topographic maps for offline use before you leave your Wi-Fi connection, using navigation tools like AllTrails.
Because your phone's GPS receiver will still track your blue dot on the map even when you have absolutely 0 bars of cellular service.
It's a lifesaver. Now, all of this gear, the layers, the water, the tech, it all requires a proper carrying system.
You can't just use a standard school backpack.
No, a book bag will just dig into your trapezius muscles and cause terrible neck strain. The guide specifies a hydration-compatible day pack with padded shoulder straps and a structural waist belt.
And that waist belt is not decorative.
Not at all. It is designed to transfer the physical weight of the pack off the spine and directly onto the iliac crest of the hips.
Utilizing the body's strongest skeletal structures to carry the load.
Exactly.
Inside that properly fitted pack, your first aid kit needs to be heavily curated. We aren't just talking about a few flimsy bandages here.
The guide emphasizes carrying moleskin.
Yes. For those unfamiliar, moleskin is a heavy-duty, soft cotton fabric with a zinc oxide adhesive backing.
Because blisters aren't caused by moisture alone.
Right, they are caused by sheer force.
Right.
The friction of your sock rubbing against your heel thousands of times. Moleskin acts as a durable second skin that absorbs that friction.
You also need an emergency Mylar blanket in that kit.
It reflects up to 90% of radiated body heat back to the user, weighs almost nothing, but offers a massive safeguard against sudden temperature drops.
With the physiological parameters set and the gear optimized, the application of all this preparation really comes down to trail selection.
And this involves navigating the financial access to these outdoor spaces, which is where the guide drops a massive, incredibly practical life hack for U.S. residents who are 62 and older.
The America the Beautiful Senior Pass.
It is such a good deal. For a one-time lifetime fee of $80, or there is a $20 annual option, seniors gain entrance to over 2,000 federal recreation sites.
This includes every single national park, national forest, and Bureau of Land Management area.
And national parks, by design, feature the most rigorously maintained trails.
Graded pathways, accessible trailhead restrooms, and on-site rangers who can provide real-time terrain assessments.
It completely removes the financial friction of accessing premium, safe outdoor environments.
Access is one thing, but ambition is another. The guide strongly advises against what we might call ego hiking.
Tackling a highly publicized, strenuous trail right out of the gate.
It's exactly. Resulting in severe delayed onset muscle soreness or injury, which just ruins the experience permanently.
They outline a strict formula for tactical calibration on the first few outings.
The route should be under 3 miles round trip. The elevation gain must be less than 300 feet.
And the path should be clearly marked and well-groomed.
Choosing a trail with those metrics isn't about coddling yourself or admitting physical weakness.
Not at all. It is a deliberate, strategic choice to test your systems. You need a controlled environment to see how your new boots feel after 2 miles.
To adjust the length of your trekking poles.
And most importantly, to monitor how your cardiovascular system responds under your specific medication parameters.
You are shaking down the equipment and your body, much like taking a new car around the block before getting on the highway.
And part of that controlled environment relies heavily on meteorological awareness.
The guide's weather protocol is rigid. Check the forecast the night before, and check it again the morning of the departure.
Because in mountainous regions, a 15-degree temperature drop and a rain squall can materialize in an hour.
And when you're dealing with an aging body's reduced thermoregulatory efficiency, a sudden cold snap turns a moderate 3-mile walk into a high-risk survival scenario.
If the forecast indicates extreme heat, high winds, or electrical storms, the tactical decision is simply to postpone. The terrain will be there tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Now, I was looking at the injury statistics the guide cites, and it brings up a really counterintuitive point about navigating that terrain.
Most people naturally assume the arduous, lung-busting climb up the mountain is the danger zone.
Right. But the vast majority of orthopedic injuries and falls actually occur on the descent. Gravity turns the descent into a high-impact gauntlet.
What's fascinating here is the biomechanics of why that happens. It involves eccentric muscle contractions.
Explain that for us.
When you are hiking downhill, gravity is actively accelerating your mass toward the bottom. Your quadriceps, the massive muscle group on the front of the thighs, they have to act as a braking system.
Think of a car riding its brakes down a 10-mile mountain pass.
Eventually, the brake pads overheat and fail. In your body, the muscle fibers are lengthening while simultaneously under intense tension to slow your momentum.
This eccentric loading causes microscopic muscle tears much faster than walking uphill.
Leading to profound muscle fatigue and a loss of stability in the knee joint.
So to counter that, you have to consciously alter your mechanics. You shorten your stride significantly.
You maintain a micro bend in the knee so you aren't jamming the joint cartilage with a straight leg on every step.
And this is the moment where the trekking poles earn their keep. You plant them slightly ahead of you, transferring the braking force from your quadriceps directly into your arms and chest.
Now, managing the ascent requires its own mechanical hack. The guide details a classic, century-old mountaineering technique known as the rest step.
I found the mechanics of the rest step brilliant. It's incredibly effective for older hikers managing cardiovascular load on steep inclines.
It really is.
Normally, when we walk upstairs, our muscles are engaged continuously, acting like springs pushing us upward. But with the rest step, you are building in a micropause.
As you step up and forward, you briefly lock your downhill trailing knee.
For a fraction of a second, you turn that back leg into a rigid pillar.
You let your skeletal structure, your bones, support the entire weight of your body, allowing the muscles in that leg to completely relax.
It sounds insignificant, but if you multiply that fraction of a second of muscle relaxation by 10,000 steps up a mountain, the cumulative energy savings is massive.
You are literally letting your skeleton carry the burden so your muscles can breathe.
That concept of energy conservation plays directly into the psychological strategy of route planning, too.
Yes, the guide emphasizes a major paradigm shift. Never hike to a destination. Hike to a time limit.
It is such a psychological trap to say, we're going to hike until we reach the alpine lake.
The just one more ridge mentality.
Exactly. You think the lake is right over the next hill, so you keep pushing, ignoring your thirst and your heart rate.
And by the time you finally get there, you realize your energy reserves are totally depleted.
And you still have to navigate the hardest part, the descent.
By setting a strict turnaround time, say exactly 60 minutes outward on a planned 2-hour hike, you remove the emotional temptation to overextend yourself.
When the watch hits 1 hour, you pivot and head back, guaranteeing you have the physiological fuel for the return trip.
Which brings us to the literal fuel. The hydration protocols for older adults have specific nuances that younger hikers don't face.
Because as the human body ages, the physiological mechanism that triggers the sensation of thirst becomes blunted.
By the time an older hiker actually feels thirsty, they are likely already in a state of mild dehydration.
Furthermore, older bodies naturally hold a lower overall percentage of water, so the guide dictates a baseline consumption of ½ a liter of water per hour of moderate exertion.
And guzzling plain water isn't enough, which is a critical point.
Right. When you sweat, you aren't just losing water, you are expelling sodium, potassium, and magnesium.
If you only drink plain water, you risk diluting your blood sodium levels, a dangerous condition called hyponatremia.
You have to introduce electrolyte tablets or powders into your water bottles to replace those minerals in real time. This prevents the severe muscle cramping that can leave you stranded on a trail.
Caloric intake is just as structured. The digestive system slows down during intense exercise as blood is routed to the muscles.
Therefore, trail nutrition needs to be dense and easily digestible.
The guide advocates for nuts and nut butters for sustained, slow-burning fats and proteins,
alongside dried fruit for an immediate fructose energy spike.
They also include a non-negotiable directive for diabetic hikers. Always carry fast-acting glucose tablets.
Because the metabolic demand of a sustained incline can crash blood sugar levels unpredictably.
And glucose tablets offer an instant measured correction that a regular snack simply cannot match.
Taking all these elements together, the pacing, the poles, the fueling, it fundamentally changes the narrative around chronic conditions.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the therapeutic application of hiking is profound. The guide points out that orthopedic surgeons frequently prescribe hiking for patients who have fully recovered from total knee or hip arthroplasty.
Because the impact is dispersed and the surface is softer than asphalt, it is the optimal way to rebuild stabilizing muscle tissue around the new joint hardware.
Consider osteoarthritis. The instinct is to avoid movement to prevent joint pain. However, using the kinetic redistribution of trekking poles allows a hiker to engage in sustained movement,
which stimulates the production of synovial fluid, the body's natural joint lubricant. It actively reduces stiffness.
For osteoporosis, where the fear of falling paralyzes many older adults, The weight-bearing nature of ascending and descending a graded trail creates the exact mechanical stress the skeletal system requires to stimulate bone density regeneration.
It is about calculated risk yielding immense physiological dividends. And to mitigate that risk, the guide leans heavily into the social infrastructure of the outdoor community.
Because hiking doesn't have to be an isolating endeavor.
Organizations like the Sierra Club run localized chapters with outings specifically tailored to senior pacing. REI co-ops host guided regional hikes. Countless 55-plus communities have dedicated trail clubs.
Tapping into these groups provides immediate access to localized trail knowledge, pacing accountability, and the inherent safety of numbers.
Conversely, the desire for solitude is exactly why many seek out the woods in the first place.
For the solo hiker, the security protocols must be ironclad. You leave a detailed itinerary with a trusted contact, the specific trailhead, the intended route, and a hard deadline for your return.
You do not deviate from that filed flight plan.
If a navigational error occurs and you lose the trail, the survival protocol is absolute. Stop moving.
The further you try to self-rescue when disoriented, the wider the search grid becomes.
You stay put, you deploy your Mylar blanket if the temperature drops, and you use an emergency whistle.
3 sharp, consecutive blasts on a whistle is the universally recognized distress signal in the backcountry.
It is.
So, what does this all mean? It means that venturing into the outdoors as we age is not an act of clinging to youth. It is a sophisticated, highly beneficial adaptation.
Yes.
There is a learning curve regarding the satellite tech, the moisture-wicking gear, and the biomechanics of the rest step. But the return on that investment, the lowered cortisol, the improved balance, the bone density, and the sheer joy of the environment is staggering.
It truly is a comprehensive blueprint for longevity.
Start with the tactical calibration, get the right shoes, grab a pair of trekking poles, respect the weather, and focus entirely on the consistency of the habit rather than the distance on the map. I highly encourage you to take this blueprint and use it.
Whether you are helping a family member prepare for a national park trip or mapping out your own local trailhead for Saturday morning, the parameters are set and the trail is waiting.
And as we wrap up this analysis, I want to leave you with a broader perspective to consider long after this deep dive ends. When we look at how incredibly beneficial the unpredictable, uneven terrain of a hiking trail is for a senior's balance, bone density, and cognitive focus, it raises an important question. Have we actually done ourselves a massive disservice by paving our modern world so perfectly flat, inadvertently removing the very physical challenges our bodies evolved to navigate and need to stay resilient as we age?
Hiking for Seniors. Everything is right there waiting for you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share it with a friend who might be ready to hit the trail. And as always, until next time, take care of yourself, be kind to your heart, and live your best senior life.